I found what was left of them just after the big storm passed, the one that dropped 4 feet of powder and shut the wind up for a week. It wasn't a grave, not yet. The wolves hadn't found it. It was a campsite, or the ghost of one. I smelled the plastic before I saw it, a bright blue tent ripped to ribbons, flapping from a broken aluminum pole. It looked like a wounded bird, something the wind had played with and then forgotten. I walked closer. The snow was deep. They had tried. You could see the desperate, frantic marks of their boots, all scuffed and stomped down, where they had fought with the tent and fought with the wind. And the gear, it was everywhere, spilled out on the snow like the guts of some animal. A shiny silver sleeping bag now full of ice. A little gas stove knocked on its side. A bright orange bag. A survival kit. I kicked it with my moccasin. Next to a log, there was a small, sad pile of wet twigs. Twigs from the ground. Useless. Next to that, a block of magnesium, still in its bright plastic wrapper. Never even been opened. They had everything except a single useful thought. I looked around. No blood, no bodies. They had run, fled their own camp, fled their own expensive gear, probably in a blind panic when the wind got loud. They ran from the one place that could have saved them if they'd known how to use it. I looked at the useless pile of wet sticks. I looked at the unopened fire starter. They had the tools. They had the things. They just didn't have the skill. It's a sickness. This modern idea that a thing can save you, that you can buy survival. You go to your stores, you buy a jacket that promises to keep you warm. You buy a tent that promises to keep you dry. You buy a little box with a flint and a scraper, and you call yourself prepared. You're not prepared. You're burdened. You've got a pack full of guarantees that the mountain has never heard of. You've got warranties that the cold cannot read. You've replaced competence with equipment. You've traded skill for a receipt. And when the wind comes up, when the night falls and the temperature drops like a stone, all those things in your pack are just dead weight. They are just the heavy, expensive trash you will die next to. What you've abandoned isn't just the old ways. It's the human mind. It's the ability to see. You look at a forest and you see scenery. You see nature. It's a picture to you. When I look at the same forest, I see a house. I see the thick spruce tree with its deep sinking branches, and I know that underneath it the ground is dry and the wind cannot blow. I see a dead, standing pine, and I know its wood is dry to the core. I see a paper birch, and I know its bark is full of an oil that will burn even when wet. You see a picture. I see a storehouse. I see tools. I see tinder. I see shelter. That is the skill you abandoned. You abandoned vision. You've all gone blind. The 2 skills you lost are the ones that hold life itself. They are the oldest. Fire and shelter. And you think you know them. You think because you have a lighter, you know fire. You think because you have a tent, you know shelter. You are wrong. The skill of shelter is not carrying one. A tent is a fragile, noisy cloth that the wind hates. The skill is finding one. It's the ability to read the land, to see the dip in the rock, the lee side of the hill, the snowdrift that can be hollowed out. It's the knowledge that a 6-foot pine with branches that sweep the ground is a roof that has already been built for you. You abandoned the skill of using the world as it is, and the skill of fire. This is the one that makes me saddest. You think the skill of fire is the spark. You buy your magnesium, your flints, your storm-proof matches. The spark is the easy part. The spark is nothing. It's vanity. The skill of fire is the tinder. It's the mastery of finding a dry, combustible, fluffy thing in a world that is soaking wet or frozen solid. It's the knowledge to look at a dead, rotten poplar and know that the inner wood, the part that's dry and punk, will catch a spark. It's the knowledge to look at a birch tree and shave the thinnest curls from its inner bark. It's the knowledge, the patience, to build a tiny, delicate nest of this tinder, a nest that can catch the spark and hold it. You've abandoned the patience for the tinder. You just have the spark. And a spark on a wet log is just a cold, blue, disappearing insult. I know these things, not because I'm smart, but because one night my arrogance was stripped away and all I had left were those two skills. And they were almost not enough. I was young, full of the hot blood and stupid confidence of a man who thinks he knows things. I was checking a trapline on the far side of the Beaver Creek. It was late. The sun was already dipping. The air was getting that sharp, hard edge of a deep, cold night. I was in a hurry. That same sickness. I was thinking about my cabin, about my fire. I wasn't thinking about where my feet were. I was crossing the creek. It should have been frozen solid. But I walked too close to a beaver run where the water was still moving underneath. The sound. That's what I remember first. Not a loud crack, a sickening sound, a slushy, tearing sound. And then the world fell out. The cold was not cold. It was shock. It was a violence. It was a physical blow that punched every last bit of air from my lungs. It was black, rushing water. It took my legs and tried to pull me under the ice sheet. I clawed. I screamed, but no sound came out. My lungs were on fire. I managed to get my arms onto the solid ice, and the weight of my waterlogged buckskins and my pack tried to pull me back down. I hung there, half in, half out, and I heaved, I kicked, and I screamed, and I pulled like a desperate animal. I slid out onto the ice, a gasping, wet, freezing thing. I lay there for a second, and the world rushed in. The wind. It was a 10-degree night with a 20-mile-an-hour wind. The water on my clothes didn't just feel cold. It felt like fire. I could feel the heat being ripped from my skin. My clothes, my buckskins, they were turning to ice. They were becoming a suit of armor. I staggered to the bank. I knew I had minutes, not hours, minutes. Panic. It tastes like copper. It fills your throat. Fire, fire, fire. That was the only thought in my head. I fell against a big cottonwood, my pack. I tore it open, my fire kit, my flint and steel, my hands. They weren't hands. They were wood. They were clumsy clubs. The water had frozen on them, and the blood was gone. I fumbled with the pouch. I dropped my steel. I cried out. I picked it up. I found my piece of flint. I held it in my clumsy claw. I grabbed a handful of twigs from the ground, the same wet, useless twigs I saw at that modern camp. I held the flint. I struck. The spark was good. It flew, and it hit the wet twigs and did nothing. I struck again and again, faster, harder. I was sobbing. Just a wild animal sound. The sparks were dying. The wind was stealing them. I was shaking so hard my teeth were rattling. My vision was starting to get narrow. I knew this feeling. This was the end. This was the stupid end. I was going to die, wet, freezing, in the dark, with a perfect, useless fire starter in my hand, and then a different voice. It wasn't my voice. It was an old voice, the voice of a Cree man who had taught me, a man I had mostly ignored. "The white man fights," he'd said. "He never thinks." I stopped. I just stopped. My body was screaming, but I held it still. Think. What kills you? The wind. What saves you? Heat. What comes first? The thought was so clear it was like a slap. "Shelter, you fool. Shelter first. Get out of the wind. The fire comes second." I dropped the flint. I looked around, not with panic, with vision. I saw it. 20 yards away, a massive, old-growth spruce. Its branches were so thick they swept the ground. It was a dark, solid cone. I didn't walk. I crawled. My legs were stiffening. I pushed my way under those low, thick branches, and the world stopped. The wind was gone. I could hear it. I could hear it screaming in the tops of the trees, but in here, under the branches, it was still. The ground, it wasn't even snow. It was a thick, dry, ancient carpet of needles. I was out of the wind. I had bought myself minutes. Now, fire. I was still shaking, but the panic was gone. I had a purpose. My knife. I got it out. My hands were still wood. I couldn't do fine work. Think. What burns? The birch tree I had passed? I couldn't go back. What else? The spruce tree. The inside of the spruce. I looked at the trunk. There was old, dry sap. I scraped at it. It was rock hard, but I got a few chips. The tree itself. I looked at the dead, dry branches underneath the shelter, the ones that had never seen rain. They were called squaw wood. I broke them. They snapped with a clean, dry sound. Now, tinder, my knife, my pants, my buckskin pants. I turned the blade inward and I scraped. I scraped the dry inside of my own frozen pants, creating a tiny, fluffy pile of leather dust. I took my knife handle. It was wood. I shaved it. Tiny, thin curls of dry maple. I built a nest, a pathetic, tiny nest in my frozen claw. I put the sap chips in it. Now, the spark. My hands were so stiff. I held the steel. I struck the flint. No spark. My angle was wrong. Calm. Slow. I braced my hand. I struck again. A good, hot spark. It hit the nest. Nothing. I struck again. A spark. Nothing. I felt the tears freeze on my face. Again. I struck, and a spark landed on a piece of that sap. It didn't flame. It glowed. A tiny, red, angry eye. I put my face down to it. My breath. I didn't blow. That would kill it. I breathed on it. A long, slow, warm breath. The red eye grew. A wisp of smoke. A terrible, acrid smell. I added one curl of the maple wood. It glowed. And then a flame. A tiny, weak, precious flame, no bigger than my fingernail. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. I fed it. The small twigs, the dry spruce. I fed it like a newborn baby. I guarded it with my own body. It grew. I spent the night there. I stripped off my frozen clothes and hung them by the fire. I sat there, naked, shivering, and alive. I had almost died because I had forgotten the order. Shelter, tinder, spark, not the other way around. When I finally got back to my cabin 2 days later, I was a different man. I remembered what that old Cree man, Stands in Shadow, had told me. He'd watched me set up my canvas tent, a big, heavy, clumsy thing. He had laughed. "You white men," he said, "you carry your house on your back. You complain about the weight. You are a turtle, a slow, stupid turtle." I was offended. "It's a good tent," I said. "It is a cloth," he said. "The wind will eat it. The snow will crush it. You walk past a dozen houses every day. You just do not see them. He had pointed to a stand of spruce, just like the one that saved me. There, he said, is a lodge. It is warm, it is dry, it is already built. The forest is your mother. You are sleeping under her skirt. But you want to build your own noisy, cold house in her yard. I didn't understand him then. After I fell through the ice, I understood. He taught me to see. I stood there at that abandoned modern camp for a long time. The wind was quiet. The sun was out. It was a beautiful day. I looked at the ripped tent, the spilled stove, and that little plastic-wrapped magnesium bar. Those people, they had the spark. They had a hotter spark than I ever had. They had a tool that could make a fire of 3,000 degrees. But they didn't have the tinder. They didn't have the knowledge to look at the birch tree 20 feet away and see its paper bark. They didn't have the skill to look at the dead, standing pine and know its inner wood was dry. They didn't have the vision. They looked at the forest and saw a threat, a wet, cold, scary thing. They didn't see the house. The skills we abandoned, they're not just about fire. They're about resourcefulness. It's the ability to see a solution when all you have is problems. It's the ability to make something from nothing. You have lost that. You have everything, and because you have everything, you have nothing. I picked up the little magnesium bar. I put it in my pouch. It might be useful. Then I turned and walked away. Those people, wherever they ran, they had everything money could buy. But they were poor. The cold doesn't care about your money. It doesn't care about your gear. It only accepts one currency, the currency of skill, and they were bankrupt.